Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 391 and 392. Tyranny, the rulers of Sabaody, the celestial dragons. Sabaody, not sure. And new rivals gather, the 11 supernovas. In these episodes, wow, this is really upsetting, you guys. The slavery thing is who knew what a bummer slavery is? It's really bumming me out. We also get an intro to a lot of new players, and I am pretty stoked about all these guys. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. Florian is here in the chat. What's up, Florian? In the house. We've got a bunch of people here today, though. Thank you guys for joining me. So, you all, this pair of episodes, it's a real roller coaster in terms of the vibe. Like, we start off with this whimsical bubble bicycles and amusement parks, and like, you know, it's just a feeling of wonder and childlike excitement, and I'm here for it. And then it really goes left abruptly in a way that, like, I don't know what exactly it is that gets me so bad about this scene with the dude who has the collar on him. I think it's like how huge and threatening he seems for just a moment, and then abruptly he becomes this like desperate, sad creature, you know. But there's been plot lines about people who are being held unjustly and whatnot, and none of them really, and I don't mean like in this show, I mean like in general, I have seen a lot of stuff where you have like clearly what's happening is wrong and evil. And as much as you can understand that, it doesn't like necessarily get to you, you know? And I know this is going to be like a real controversial thing to say. So Seraphim is in the chat. Good luck. No one agrees on how to pronounce this place name. It's an English transliteration of a pun based on the Japanese transliteration of the Portuguese word for soap. Wow. Well, they should have called it soapody instead for the English translation. But what I was going to say that I think is like kind of a controversial take. So y'all know about the whole I don't want to call it scandal. That feels too extreme. But Amazon had the Rings of Power series that was like the most expensive television show ever produced. And it just didn't do super well. And I will tell you guys the truth here. I didn't like hate it. But I only watched, I think, 2, maybe 3 episodes and literally forgot about it. That's like where I never felt truly invested in any of it. I just didn't. And it's such a difficult thing to pinpoint why that is and why it works sometimes. But there's like a whole storyline in that where elves are being enslaved. And that's a really good example of one where I'm looking at it and I'm like, I know this is wrong, and I know that we need to fight for our freedoms and yada, yada, yada. And yet I'm just not particularly hype about getting these people free in a way that feels like visceral. I'm just sort of like, well, I know they're going to get out of here. So there's just a sense of distance. Do you know what I'm saying? And this was so much more upsetting. And I think that part of it is the fact that this guy has succeeded in getting away to a point. So it comes upon you in a very surprising way. If you are zeroing in on the mines or wherever it is that the elves are, and everybody is in shackles, you know what you're getting, and you're kind of mentally preparing yourself for, oh, okay, we're about to go into a real bummer scenario here, right? But there's also an aspect of it being just like so overdone. Everybody is just like chilling and shopping, and this woman runs into a guy, and he grabs her, and it really feels like he's doing the whole, like, how dare you, there's a lot of that, honestly, like in this arc so far, I accidentally walked into somebody has been used like several times now, and I don't know. I don't remember this being such a big thing in other episodes, but I feel like we've had this come up many, many times already. But this just, you think that you get what's going on, and then all of a sudden he's begging her to get this off him, and then starts just begging everybody for help. And then we've got the whole the attitude of the people surrounding him. And I think this is also part of what like really hammers it home. Nobody wants to look at him. Nobody wants to step forward and help. Nobody feels that they can do anything. And nobody likes this. You don't get an impression that the people of this town look down on the slaves in the way that one would expect. There's not a real sense of like, we are first-class citizens and they are barely people. It's more a feeling, to me at least, of there but for the grace of God go I. And I don't know if that's like actually true. It seems like if you are a resident here that probably you aren't allowed to be taken as a slave, I would guess. But also the way that these fucking, quote, dragons work, and I'll talk about them in a minute. I don't know that that's true. It seems like they could just kind of do whatever they fucking feel like. And I'm not really certain whether the townspeople are safe either. The natives. Sorry, there's a lot of people in the chat here. Kyle says, oh, because you were talking about Rings of Power, because only 2 of the 5 plot lines were interesting. Fair, yes. Seraphim, yes, let's make our main character a young, impulsive hothead, ignoring that she is literally older than the sun. I honestly, like, you say this, and I want to be like, yeah, I know, right? I don't remember. I just genuinely don't remember so much of that show. It was beautiful. I would love to make many scenes from the show my desktop background, but do I remember, like, anyone's name even, other than Galadriel? Like, literally not a soul. And Kyle says, I think how cartoony and lighthearted One Piece makes the hard turn into dark and realistic evil all the more jarring. That's true. And Seraphim says, agree, the contrast between the idyllic vacation paradise where the stuff goes on out in the open but is only quietly ignored really makes it harder. Yeah. Kyle says, there are criticisms to make of Oda's storytelling, but it's clear he has things he wants to talk about and the guts to actually talk about them. So, really quick, I'm going to do... you know what? Actually, I take it back. Not really quick. I'm not going to do that. I am going to start at the fucking start of these 2 episodes, because I'm getting way, way ahead of myself here, as I am wont to do. But we start things off with... all of our friends, like, deciding exactly where they're going to, how they're going to split up and what they're going to do. So Sanji gets talked into staying to guard all of the treasure by Nami because she just drops some very heavy hints, and he is a slave to love, as he puts it. We have Zoro running off, and they all try to stop him and be like, dude, what are you doing? You're going to get lost. You know you are. And Zoro's pretty mad at the insinuation that he could get lost, which is just, sir, I am so sorry, but we have empirical evidence here, and you're going to need to acknowledge that. Like, are you also an anti-vaxxer? Because I just genuinely have no interest in listening to anybody who is denying the facts. And you have been lost every time you've gone off by yourself. It has never not happened. So, and he makes an argument that because all the trees are numbered, it's impossible to get lost. And they kind of give him that one. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess he's thought this through more than I thought. But then he looks at one of the trees and is like, okay, I know which tree to go to. And it's 41, but there's a bubble over it. So he says that it is 1 and walks away feeling very smug about how, what do they think? I don't know how to count. And I have like a couple of questions about how this whole numbers thing works, but it's super not important. So I'm going to wait to like even ask it. We're going to focus, okay? We're really going to do it. So this is when Hachi is explaining about the celestial dragons. They wear masks to avoid breathing the same air as us. No matter what they do, promise to stay away. And Luffy very cavalierly, I will say, just goes, uh-huh. And I'm like, oh boy, he is not listening. There are a couple of other things you should probably keep an eye out for. This is the place everyone gathers before heading to the New World. In other words, like you, there's a lot of big-name pirate crews around, which means Marines and bounty hunters are out to catch them. Also, the law won't protect pirates from being bought and sold here. Kidnapping happens all the time, so try not to stand out. If people realize how much you're worth, the whole island will be on you, and you'll never get your ship coded. Also, we're right by Navy headquarters, so the Marines here are nobody to fuck with, and we've also got some pretty intense bounty hunters. Everything is a little bit higher stakes than where you've been. Once again, Luffy, we're going to be just fine. And Hachi has this like mark on his head that he's covered with a bandage. And when Luffy asks what that's about, he says, don't worry about it. Which I'm going to say, I am worried about it. Hachi, what's going on, bruh? What are you doing? And he says, Cammy isn't a mermaid and I'm not a fish man. By the way, not while we're here. Just pretend we're humans like you. And I just want to say, I know this world has produced some weird looking humans. So I'm not trying to say they can't pass Hachi off as a human. But I am saying that it feels like they're going to have to explain his face somehow. And they really all should get some kind of story going that they can agree on, you know? So this is the point where Robin glances up and notices that that Cammy, I always want to call her Cammy, and I know that it's not, you don't say it like that, and I keep forgetting how you actually say it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to call her Cammy, though. Like, I'm just because that's how it's spelled. I feel like it's Cammy. Cammy. It's Cammy, right? I feel like I remember one of you telling me that it was pronounced with like a K-A-Y sound. All right, I'm going to go Cammy. And really fingers crossed here on this. But the like vibe that she's giving off is not carefree. All the girls are sort of like, oh, we're going to go to the mall and shop, except for her, and she doesn't want to be separated, which they're sort of like, that's weird that she didn't come, but I'm like, if she's trying to pretend that she's human, she can't walk around. Like, that's very obviously what's happening here, but they are not filling in our friends about why they are pretending to be human. And I didn't really understand why not, when it's clearly like they'd be worth money to sell. Because we already know that mermaids are worth a lot of money, and we've already heard the other guys, the other pirates, like talking about selling her. So I don't know. It's just it doesn't feel like something that we need to keep under our hat unless there's like another aspect to it. I don't know. Maybe they're in particular, they are wanted people, you know? So this is the point when Luffy like is able to climb up inside one of the soap bubbles, and a dude on the side of the road, basically, he's got like a little structure that he's selling out of a stall, I guess. And he hands him this thing and is like, bring this in there with you. As long as you can reach the pedals, you can drive it around all over the place. And it is honestly the coolest thing, you guys. This is straight up my favorite mode of transport that I have ever seen. Period. End of story. It's a giant bubble. You've got your little, it's like a recumbent bike. You're not on top of the pedals. Like, you're leaning back in this seat. It looks somewhat comfortable. And when you pedal, it just like creates the spin behind you to push the bubble around. And I am obsessed with it. Obsessed with it. So at this point, he's talking to them about the prices. And he's saying, those are the best way to get around. We rent them for 500 berries, but you can buy your own for 10,000. And Hachi is like, no, we're just going to rent one. And Luffy gets in a pretty big argument with him about how I have my own money and you don't tell me what to do with my money. If I want to buy one, I'm going to fucking buy one. And I was immediately on Luffy's side, even though I knew better, because Hachi's whole energy is giving, I don't want to do this right now, but trust me, there's like reasons. And I was like, oh, but buy one, it's so cool. Well, what it turns out is that the type of atmosphere that this island has is really unusual. So it is the only place other than Fishman Island where you can even use one of these bikes. As soon as you get far enough away from here, it will pop and be useless. And it turns out this is like a really common grift that trying to sell them to people who think that they could just do this forever. It would be too, you know, and that is so incredibly shady. So Luffy gets pretty pissed off as he's like realizing exactly what that guy was trying to pull. I don't blame him. So I'm realizing like our starfish friend, is he worth any money? Because they aren't hiding what he is. I'm just, now that we're being kind of paranoid about this, he's just out in the open, it seems like. I don't know whether that's something we need to worry about at all. We have a stall that's selling these like Grand Line cookies, these or steamed buns. That's what it is. Gramen for short. And they're meant to be like souvenirs that you take home because they last for a long time. They are shelf stable for 3 months. But none of them are actually paying attention to the like souvenir aspect, and they are just swallowing entire platefuls of samples. And honestly, if I were this guy, I would have straight up just taken those plates away from them. Nobody buys any. Has anybody in the audience, have any of you ever worked as a sample giver at any like establishment? This was my job when I worked for Whole Foods. I was with the marketing department after I moved out of the grocery department, and I was supposed to make these displays at a table that I would roll out, and there would be like a it was like quarterly meeting where all of the people from marketing from the Northeast would come to this one area, and we would all sit in conference for the whole day while different vendors would come in and show off their new products, whether it was food or equipment of some kind that we might sell, various different things. And we would get the story behind the company and how they were made. And then we would get a calendar of when we were meant to go out and give these samples. And we would have been prepped with all of this information about the company and how to promote the product. And sometimes it was something that you would just give as is, like cookies, or sometimes it was something that you would have to find a recipe and make it and cook it on the floor in like an electric skillet or something. And I really liked the job, and I was really good at it on the days when I felt like giving a fuck, but I didn't always feel like giving a fuck. And I really, like, it was startling to me how thoughtless and selfish people were regarding samples. And I'm sure that at other stores it would be even worse, because Whole Foods is like, it's so overpriced that a lot of the people who come in there have a real like high opinion of themselves and would be more restrained, I feel like, than say the crowd at Sam's Club, who you're at Sam's Club because you're looking for bargains and that's what you're here for. So you're going to try and get everything you can out of going, which is much more my energy. And I'm sure a place like Sam's, this is like child's play to them and they deal with this all the time. But the number of people who would just come up and like dig their hands into a bowl full of stuff that I am portioning out in front of them into little containers. It was just so gross. Like, I would have to throw whole batches of things away because some asshole just reached over, and I would put boxes on display to like create a barrier between customers and the bowl, and they would just reach right the fuck over it. They did not care. And yeah, taking like all of the samples and just like dumping them into their mouths one after the other, or it was just, this just was a moment where I was like, oh my God, I hate these kinds of people. So anyway, this is when we cut, because like our friends have sort of split up here, and we've got Nami, Hachi, Robin, and Starfish looking at all of these hotels, which are made by just putting a metallic coating on bubbles and like holding them in place. It's a really neat idea. So we've got a ton of round, like perfectly spherical buildings. Oh, you know what? I'm seeing now that Luffy walks away from that I keep forgetting the word for stall. Oh my God. He's walking away from it, and he's got like tons of boxes under his arms. So I will say at least he did buy some, because I forgot that he bought any, and I was just like, oh my Christ, I would be so mad. Seraphim says all retail employees should be issued shock prods and given free rein to use them. Y'all, I feel like everybody on Earth should be forced to work retail for like 3 years. 1 year isn't enough. 2 years isn't enough. You need 3 full years to truly appreciate the tedium, the demeaning attitude of the employers, the customers, and just like how thankless it is. It is there's so many folks out there, you meet them and you just know immediately. You've never worked a job like this, have you? You just haven't. I can fucking tell. So yeah, everybody's got, Chopper has a little keychain, and Brooke has a pennant that says like Grand Line on it. And when Hachi turns around, he's like, oh, you guys have a lot of stuff. You should get those bubbled up. And they're like, what do you mean? And then we cut to Luffy holding the string on what looks like a balloon, and all of his like items have been packed into a bubble so that he doesn't have to hold them in his hands. Can I just say that like I loved Skypiea, but this bubble thing, the answer to all our problems, and I want to live here except for the slavery. I will stay in my side of the archipelago and not archipelago, whatever. You get it. I'm just going to never say any words again, guys. I'm bad at it. But I love all, the making of the buildings. That was a really particular moment for me of just like, what? And now you just have a structure. Like, I I want to spend so much more time here, you know? And by spend more time here, I mean, like, I know we're going to have an arc here, but I mean, spend more time here in the touristy way that we're doing currently, not in the fighty way, because the touristy way is where you get to see some of the neat stuff that's been created, and also just like appreciate the downtime and getting to see all of the other things that the island's got going on. So yeah, we have a little interstitial there, and then we jump back to, oh my God, I forgot about this. They have like Hachi, who's riding one of his bubble bikes, and it's a weird thing, guys, because like Luffy's inside of his bubble, so he is sort of, it's almost like he's in a pod, you know? But the way that Hachi's is set up is the bubble is like underneath him, and the bike is like kind of put over the top of it. So Brook and Chopper and Kami are all sitting kind of on the bubble itself. They're not sitting on the bike. And it just isn't as cool. But the way that Luffy's is, where he's inside it, that's the only way. I really prefer that. So this is the moment where we get the kid running into this guy, and it was so upsetting. So this dude, he has this hair that's divided into two, I want to call them ponytails, but that doesn't feel adequate to what these look like. And he has extremely heavy eyeliner. It's giving Moria, honestly. The two ponytails, it's like the elastics are way down on the base. Excuse me, guys. Not the base, like near his head. I mean, they're almost at the ends of the ponytail, but the hair is still like shooting up and out the way that they do when you have the elastic near your scalp. And he has this like outfit with this huge popped collar and everything. So I guess you get enslaved, but you don't get given like a uniform. It just looks like he was wearing what he probably had been wearing when he was a pirate. And he also has very pointed ears, which I don't remember seeing on anybody else. And I don't know that that's like important, but it just was very noteworthy. The whole way that he is designed is like we're splitting everything in two points in either direction, you know? And this girl is like, please don't kill me. And he tosses her. And he says, I give up. I don't want to go to the New World anymore. I've got a wife and kid back home. Please, somebody help me. My little boy, I left when he was just a baby. He doesn't even know what I look like. And for a minute, I was just like, yo, is this Usopp's dad? I really did, guys. I had a moment. I know it's not. I'm pretty sure. But I did have a moment of just like, what's going on? So he's yelling for them to help. And saying, I just want to go home. That's all that matters to me. And Hachi is saying, we got to stay out of this. He's probably just a pirate that got sold into slavery and he made a run for it. But he has to know what happens to slaves when they try to get away. And all of a sudden he looks down at the collar, which has started to tick. And it's very clear everybody is kind of understanding what's going on here. But it's starting to like get faster and faster the way that the ticking is going. And he is yelling, damn it, get off me. And then all of a sudden it explodes. And it's a really awful moment. Now, I am going to say this. I know the way that this show works. And so I did not expect him to die because of this. However, there is a point later where somebody shoots at him twice. And then after that, we're talking about how is he going to make it? And like he's still alive. And that did surprise me. I really sort of thought this is going to be a person who was used as an example. And I know that we don't kill like main characters or even really side characters, but I did think that once she took those 2 shots, I thought, now, yeah, we are getting a death, you know? And I truly was shocked when we start discussing like whether he survived or not. I was like, I thought it was understood that was a death sentence. That was it, you know? But anyway, this whole moment, it's just so sad. This guy is like in the middle of this cloud of smoke, just stumbling out of it and covered in blood. And he just says, help me. And Luffy is horrified. Like, you know, so Hachi says all the slaves get given a collar like that. And if they try to take it off or run, it'll explode. And this just reminded me a lot of the parable of the sower, I think. Or is it parable of the talents? I can't remember which one's the second one. I was commissioned to read those books. And I will tell you what, guys, that was probably the most difficult reading experience of my life. Because it was so on the nose for what we're going through as a country right now. And it was written like 2 decades ago. There was even a like racist president who was running under the banner of Make America Great Again. I'm not kidding. And like chunks of the speeches that he gave were verbatim shit that Trump was saying. It was uncanny. So that in itself was already extremely disturbing and upsetting. But then in the second book, as things have like really continued to devolve, there grew the popularity of the use of collars like this one that could not be removed except by the people who held the keys, and they could, depending on the models that you bought, deliver shocks if you disobeyed, explode to kill you, or, and this was the one that really fucked my head up, they could deliver a dose of a drug to make you feel good. And that would be the sort of thing that would get you to do things because you want another dose. Basically, they would string you out. And the idea of like being so utterly under somebody's control like that, it was so hopeless that I had nightmares about it. Like the whole concept of it was just so disturbing. So this like is giving me shades of that. It's not as intense because those books there's a lot of rape, you know, and honestly, it's written by a woman. And there's times where I'm like, okay, this is egregious. Those books, it just felt like, no, this is what would happen. Like, of course, this is what would happen. This is just how it would go. So anyway, I just want to warn anybody, because the titles of those books have been circling a lot due to the fact that they feel like more and more relevant. And while I totally get it, and I understand people's curiosity and wanting to check them out due to that, I really want to warn y'all, it is nothing to play with. Those books are extremely upsetting, super violent, super, like, there's just so much hopelessness. And even when people get out of certain situations, it's sort of like out of the frying pan into the fire, kind of, where it's like, is this actually better? And it just felt a little bit too much like the life a lot of us live. So anyway, this just reminded me of that. And so the whole vibe was, it got to me. And at this point, he collapses. And Hachi is having to really hold Luffy back and be like, dude, don't get involved. I'm for real. And just as he's saying that, a dog with a little, like, bubble over his head strolls up and stops and pees on the fallen slave. And then here come the dragons. Now, I want to say right off the bat, Hachi said, they wear masks so that they don't have to breathe the same air as us. I am going ahead and saying right now that is not why they wear these. There is some vulnerability to our air or something like it. And that, like, oh, we don't breathe the same air as you because you're beneath us, is something they put forth to explain it so that nobody would understand what the actual, like, weakness they have is. So that's just on the record. I'm saying that, and I have absolutely no doubts that's the facts. However, it is pretty wild because they're being called dragons, celestial dragons. And to me, I'm like, does this mean they're aliens? Like, is that the thing, that they can't survive in our atmosphere because they are aliens? There's a mention about the creators of the world government and how they sort of came out of nowhere. And I'm sort of thinking, like, is this it? Is that what we're doing? That they're just like straight up from like another planet, you know? So I'm going to describe the scene of these 4 people who walk up, people being used somewhat loosely in certain spots. So we've got first, on the right, a knight in armor. Pretty traditional looking, honestly. Don't really see his face, though. He's got a very pointy helm, which looks very weird, and there's barely any space between it and the neck piece of his armor. So I don't know if he is a servant or also a dragon or what. I'm going to go with also a dragon because of the shape of the armor being a little bit sus. And the shape of the outfits that the daughter and king, I don't know if it's king and princess actually, I say that, but they may not be. But the daughter and father are each wearing outfits that I can only describe as like a cross between an astronaut suit and formal robes, like white robes. And when I say astronaut suit, I mean because they are white and they have long sleeves that close at the wrist and black gloves. So like none of their body is exposed to the air, which is part of what's making my little, suspicions go off here. They are fully protected from the atmosphere. And he has this, like, the shape that they each have is like an apple standing on a couple of toothpicks. They are very top heavy and round. And I don't know if it's like the delivery system for whatever they breathe, or if it's that they have like actual wings or something under there, because it's unclear to me. The dragon aspect of this, is that just what they call themselves, or do they transform? Or is this them transformed? And I really have to address, I know that I talk about Cradle a lot, but because of what I come across in this show, it's just making certain things suddenly become clear. There are dragons that are very humanoid in the Cradle universe. And I am kind of thinking, oh, okay, I see it now. Like, this is probably part of where the inspiration for that came from. Because like I've said, he is a big fan. So, yeah, and the robes sort of split at the knee. And then below you have like, for her, it's a red, orange, and yellow. For him, it's blue, green, and yellow, but it's like layers, and it almost looks like fishtails. The way that it's split, it reminds me of the mermaid tail that Kami has. And just the look is very distinctive and strange. And then the king is dragging with him this beast. And he is sort of in a perpetual squat and is like shuffling along with his legs really heavily bent. And I'm not sure if that is how he normally walks or if this is like being forced on him for whatever reason. But this being is like, I don't know if he is human or used to be human or what the deal is. He is wearing basically like boots up to the knee, black boots. He's got a dun-colored jumpsuit and brown gloves. So most of him is also protected, but he doesn't have one of these bubbles over his head. And the gloves like buckle, and the jumpsuit buckles. There's a lot of like buckles happening here. His head is basically a rectangle, and he's just got two, it's like he's got sideburns that grow straight out from the side of his head instead of like down his face. And he has these symbols on his forehead that I am starting to be like, is this related to Hachi? Like, Hachi's got something on his head that he's covering up. I'm like, is that a slave brand? Was he enslaved and then like got out of it somehow? Like, what is that about? So the princess, when you get close up, she's also wearing this like pair of glasses underneath the bubble and long heart-shaped earrings. And the glasses have like, it's unclear to me if it's like actual glasses or if it's a tattoo that sort of looks like it, but it's dots that like go over the bridge of her nose and up her cheeks, like the way that the base of glasses do. And she is saying, another one of our slaves is broken down. And he says, did you give it its daily sedative like you were supposed to? Of course I did, but it seemed it has no effect on this poor fool. I don't even want it anymore. Would you buy me a new one? And he is like, I don't want to get you another one. You're not good at taking care of them. And I have this whole like pirate captain collection and you're fucking ruining it. And she says it was useless to begin with and starts kicking him. And this is what's really getting Luffy worked up, is that the way that she is kicking this dude who is utterly defenseless, he can't handle it. He's starting to turn purple, basically. And then all of a sudden, she's got a gun in her hand. And she says, you make me want to vomit. And she pulls the trigger twice. And that's when Hachi has to put a hand over Luffy's mouth and be like, you have got to control yourself, sir. And this dude is, as they like turn and walk back, her father is saying, what about a child for your next one? Because she's like wanting a giant. And when he says that, she says, ugh, I hate the weak ones. So, wow. Yeah, we're dealing with some real top quality charmers here for sure. Gus says, I think it's implied that they're just humans who just think they're gods because they're the descendants of the founders of the world government, or at least that's what I got from the conversation about them. Maybe. So when they call themselves celestial dragons, there's nothing actually dragonish about them at all? All right. Well, I don't believe it. But that's fine. So this is when a bunch of people like show up to carry this guy away. And Hachi is like, yeah, we got to get out of here, dude. Let's move. And we go to a little like spot in the woods where everybody is trying to calm down. Brook is pouring tea for everybody out of his little flask. And honestly, I just love him the most, you guys. I know that he's out here asking the color of panties, and it's just, that is a bummer. But the fact that he just is like, how about a nice cup of calming tea? And I was like, oh, that sounds so good. I could go for some too, to calm me down, please, sir. Thank you. And this is when Luffy says, do you think he'll be okay? And I was like, do I think he was shot twice. The collar exploded on his head. No, I don't think he's going to be okay. But then Hachi says, even if he is, he'll go to prison for piracy. And I was like, oh man, are we going to like rescue this guy eventually? So we find out that if anybody hurts a celestial dragon, an admiral gets called, and they send a fleet of ships to handle the situation. And this is when, because up to this point, we are not aware that they are related to the creators of the world government. So you're just like, what? Why? But yeah, this is when he says they are related to the bloodline of the creators of the world government. 800 years ago, a group of 20 kings came together to create an organization now known as the world government. The celestial dragons are their descendants. And you get this like weird silhouette while this is the starfish talking, while he's telling them the story of these figures standing with the bubbles over their heads, and they have heads shaped like what I can only describe as the pieces from Sorry. You know that board game where it's like it almost like a bowling pin kind of shape. And it's giving not human to me. They just don't look like people. I don't know if this is meant to be their hair or what, but they have very pointy ears. Also not sure if that's like part of it or it's just a stylized drawing. And yeah, the fact that it like the way he says 800 years ago, a group of 20 kings came together to create the organization known as the world government. Why do they all, what is this though? Is this part of it? This look that they all have? As the generations go by, they grow more and more reckless with power. And Luffy is just like, oh, fuck. Because you can really sense he wanted to start some shit. And now he's having his parade raid on a little bit. Which I'm glad that Hachi was able to hold him back at all, because I was sort of worried that he was going to like lose hold of Luffy and then we were going to have a whole scene. I really felt as if, don't jump into this until you know what they are capable of, sir, because you have got to be aware of their tricks before you start some shit here. So they're in the midst of this combo and the camera pulls back and there's a bunch of dudes who are eyeballing Luffy, and they have one of the posters, his wanted posters, and they're like, oh shit, there he is. Look he's worth this many berries. And they come down on the group and are so not prepared. Like, they get laid out immediately. And a bunch of them later are talking with each other and going, wow, we got taken out instantly. We are no match for them. Maybe a guy that's that level, like, is just somebody that we should stay away from. And they are all sort of like in concert, Yeah, you might be right. Like, we're not ready for this. But then one of them spots something with Kami. And he's like, oh, hold up a second. I think maybe we could make some money after all. And they regroup and are going to make some more trouble. So as we're driving, Hachi is explaining, he's got a map of the archipelago and he is showing them the way that the setup for all of the different sections is and what they each contain. And I did find this sort of interesting. Grouped in clusters of 10, the borders aren't as clear-cut in reality, of course. But we've got sightseeing and souvenirs. We've got amusement parks. We've got, it says human shop, etc., lawless area, hotels, etc., government officials. And then the two ones in the middle aren't labeled. I'm looking at this right now. 10 and 0. So I don't know if that's mentioned and I just missed it, but that's the way that it's being presented are the ones around the outside. And yeah, he says the government area is the front door basically, and the place that you want to avoid. Right now we're in cluster 20. Groves 1 through 29 are more or less known as the lawless area. That's why the place is crawling with so many bounty hunters. And I love Chopper being like, it would be super cool if you had told me before we came out here, and I would have had Zoro or Sanji come along instead, because I am not capable. And I'm sort of thinking, yeah, you are, though. Like, I know that you don't have the same... You can't do moves endlessly. You have your limited access, you know, because of the rumble balls and everything. But, like, Chopper... You can stand up for yourself, and I feel like you're not a liability at this point, you know? So it turns out the place that they're going is called Shockey's Ripoff Bar. And Shockey, I think, is she like just living with, or is this guy her brother? I can't remember the scenario here. But Shockey, it's so great, you guys. The bar that she runs, they open the door, and she has this guy by the collar and is beating the hell out of him. And when she recognizes Hachi, is just like, oh, hey, bud, just give me a second. Just let me finish getting this guy to pay me the money he doesn't owe me. This dude is fucked up too, like bleeding. And I love the fact that Hachi doesn't even acknowledge this. He's just like, yeah, go ahead, take your time. Oh my God. So Shockey is a complete delight. I just want to say, for the record, I feel like this is the most excited I have been about a new, like, human character in a minute. Brooke is gonna beat her, but he's not human to me anymore. He used to be, now he is supernatural. He is a walking skeleton. He has an unfair advantage because of that. But especially considering, like, the women in this show can be sort of nothing, I really, really love her. She is basically a gangster. And she has, I think that it's the same, like, voice actress as the one who does Robin, but she's got a much smokier, sort of femme fatale voice going on for this character. And she is ready to roll with absolutely anything. She's just a real, like, game player. And there's a, like, kind of vibe to her that made me feel like she was from a Pulp Fiction type universe. Like, she's a Tarantino character, is really what I kept thinking, you know? She's got this tiny little, like, top on that's got a spider on the front, but then she's got this long sleeve thing with weird frills that come out at the neck. It looked like it was going to be a hoodie, but then not. She gives Chopper some cotton candy and tells him it'll be just 100 million berries or something. And Chopper gets so upset and is like, I don't have that much. And she bends down and pats his head and says, no, honey, it's just a joke. That's so precious. And it turns out she knows exactly who all of them are. And is like, yeah, don't you know who the people you're up against are? And Luffy's like, no, I don't read newspapers. And she's like, yeah, look, I get that, but you really should, though. Like, it's to your advantage to be aware of what you're going to be up against. So I'm just saying, maybe just, I'll give you a little rundown here. So she tells them that, okay, she's married to him. She thinks that her husband, he's been gone like a month, I think she says, is in probably the lawless area. And that they're going to have to really watch their back because the people that they are going to be up against, there's going to be 11 other people with bounties exceeding 100 million berries. And at one point at the very end of the episode, she says that her husband will be fine because he's 100 times stronger than Luffy or something like that. And everybody's like, what? And I also would like to know what the fuck that means. Like, what does that look like? So let's see. You had a choice to make when you crossed the Grand Line. There were 7 sea routes that would lead you here. After you picked one, you followed your log post the rest of the way. Naturally, these other pirates picked one of the 6 routes you chose not to. And trust me, they went through just as much trouble as you did to get here. It doesn't matter which route you took, you eventually hit the Grand Line. And everybody winds up at this archipelago with hopes of getting past that giant wall. And we see like how this went, you know, with all of the different colored lines leading forward. It's very interesting to me that you get locked into like a particular route that way with the log pose. And so this is when she starts to like explain who everybody is. So the first person that we meet is this girl. I think her name is like Bonnie. And she is a glutton. And it's so, guys, honestly, it's so annoying. So she's at this restaurant and she's chowing down. And there's this dude over here that's really giving like Penguin from Batman. But he's a Capone is his name. He's got a real gangstery vibe. And he tells one of his guys to go and wire her jaw shut. When this dude tells him that's not a good idea, we're right by Navy headquarters, he turns with his fork and I think is meant to have gotten the guy in the eye with it. From, let's see, Capone Gang Beg, I don't know. West Blue captain of the Fire Tank Pirates, which is such a weird name that we're going with. But sure, let's do it. Why not? 138 million. We jump over to Bonnie. And I'm just going to really quick screen share with you guys so that you can see when we jump back over to Bonnie what we've got. I'm going to just bounce back 10 seconds. We got him, this little introductory card, and then we go to Bonnie. We are zoomed in on her titties, moving around, and then we get a nice close crotch shot. For why? For what reason? Can we just not, please? I am begging everybody to not anymore. I will say this. It's extremely refreshing for there to be a glutton character who isn't fat. Because that is just a fucking default. I mean, come on. So I will admit, I did appreciate that she is being displayed as not like, oh, I eat so much and yet I'm so skinny and that makes me sexy. It's like gross. And everybody is going, oh my God, get a hold of yourself. What are you doing? And she's eating at a rate that's like, everyone in the restaurant is going, how does she even fit that much food inside of her body? And Jewelry Bonnie, aka the glutton, 140 million berries. And I want to mention like the way that she's being introduced and everybody, like this whole title card thing is really giving like a Guy Ritchie movie sort of vibe. You know, there's like a pause, the colors change, the text comes up, and it's all like done in this really stylized way. And so then this one dude gets like sauce on another guy's pants, and his boss says that was the fate of your pants. Taking a life on this day will only bring our crew bad fortune. He is magician Basil Hawkins, and he has a 249 million berry bounty. This dude looks cool as hell. I really enjoy his whole look. I don't have time to get into individual descriptions, unfortunately, but I am certain we will run across these guys again, and I will do them justice then. Then we meet Kid, and he has got a little bit of a like Joker vibe just because of his voice and the way he's got that like lipstick and this extremely wide smile. But he's glaring at this dude in the restaurant, and there's an explosion and they're suddenly both outside, and this dude, it looks like, has 2 elbows on each arm, and so his arms look crazy. But Yeah, he is Sea Roar Scratchman Apu, 198 million berries. And then Kid, who comes out, he says, all I knew was that you wouldn't stop staring at me. And he says that basically, I'll put you out of your misery because you're such a creepy looking dude. Eustace Captain Kidd, 315 million berries. And what we find out later is that his bounty is so high because he just literally will kill anybody, civilians. It doesn't matter. He is really out here to just like cause chaos and wreck shit. And we jump over to a fight between this guy who's like using a pillar as a weapon, basically, and he's got wings, and he is fighting with a guy who's got what looks almost like a motorcycle helmet, but it's like it's not clear on the front. It's just got holes punched in it. And then some other dude with like a captain's hat jumps into the mix. And that is Red Flag Drake, 222 million berries. He's got like a domino mask with that hat. And let's see. I'm trying to find if the, oh yeah, here it is. The dude with the pillar, Mad Monk Uroj. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Honestly, I get a pretty good energy from him. I kind of like him. I feel like Mad Monk is the one that, other than the magician Basil, what's his face? He's my favorite. And he tells the masked man to get down and like thank the Drake for his life. That dude is Massacre Soldier Killer. Very terrible name. Exceptionally bad. Really, really awful. Like top 5 worst names of this show. Easy. And so these are like there's one last guy who's got like a sort of animal print thing going on his hat, on his jeans, lots of tattoos, and his name is the Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law. Surgeon of Death, I'm like on the fence if it's bad or good. Honestly, it's one of those. But yeah, so these are the dudes that they are all facing. And Shaki is like, so whoever you run into, just know these are the people that you're against. I like you, so I'm going to have your back. Like, I'm cheering you on. But there's trouble ahead for sure. To which Luffy's like, I really am just here to have fun. So I'm not going to worry too much. But your husband, I'm kind of concerned on his behalf. And this is when she said, trust me, Rayleigh's all right. He's 100 times stronger than you. And that is the end of the episode, is everybody being like 100 times. And that's it. So, yeah. There's so many people in the chat. I'm so sorry, guys. Jessica says, there's a cover story about Hachi and Kami that was released with the manga. Oh, okay. I have liked it in the... Oh, I think linked it. I have linked it in the No Spoiler Discord channel. Thank you, Jessica. Seraphim says, Oda came up with the characters and designs over a single week when his editor suggested adding a few more big-name pirates to help flesh things out and make it more interesting. Florian, yeah, because Bubbles and the dragons are not interesting enough. That is wild. They truly thought that. Yeah, I have to agree with Florian on this one. I was doing all right without that. Honestly, as much as I'm like interested now that those pirates have been introduced, initially I was a little bit disappointed because I thought we might get sort of a different thing this time than here come a bunch of big bads. And I was a little disappointed that it was like, oh no, wait, first you are going to have to deal with a bunch of big bads before you can even probably get to the like whole thing with the dragons. I was like, really? Are we doing this? It really will depend on how good they do with how well they do. I'm sorry. I hate doing that with these pirates and fleshing them out and making the fights actually interesting. So yeah, we'll have to see. Jessica says, do you believe that her husband is 100 times stronger? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that she doesn't know what Luffy's fully capable of, but I'll say he is 50 times stronger. How about that? So she's wrong, but she's not like that wrong. But I'm over time, so I really do have to wrap. I am very excited about where this is heading, though. I'm not going to lie. So I'm looking forward a lot to Thursday. All right, everybody. Thank you again so much for hanging out, for listening, and hope you're enjoying the coverage. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.